I mean, what I should say is that, in fact, the books I prefer are La Prisonnière and Albertine Disparue, for my part. Why? Because I think they are the most, I mean, again, I would mention another influence, the most Dostoevskian. The most Dostoevskian about evil. I mean, Balzac, you have Balzac in Sodome et Gomorrah.
In Charlot,
in Charlus. But in La Prisonnière and Albertine Disparue, the sweet cheap gun, you can forget about Balzac and return to, and go to Dostoevsky. And there's this passage on Dostoevsky in La Prisonnière, and the pages in Albertine Disparue on mourning after the death of Albertine are, for me, the most extraordinary pages in the recherche. This analysis of mourning. Of course, this wasn't planned when Proust started writing the novel, because it is all related to the death of Agostinelli in 1914. So this was...
Explain, Antoine, the...
Well, Albertine, we can say in a naive way that Albertine is modeled on Agostinelli, Alfred Agostinelli, who was Proust's driver in the 1910s. So after he died in a plane accident in May 1914, Proust wrote this new in-between part, La Prisonnière and Albertine Disparue, very quickly, in a couple of months. So the novel, the organization of the novel was completely altered in a couple of months. Introducing Albertine. Of course, mourning was present, because mourning is essential in Proust. The novel is conceived after his father's and mother's death, but the death of Agostinelli reactivated the importance of that theme in the novel. I was thinking one thing that should be said. Again, what frightens people about Proust is that it's long, it seems monumental. The idea that Proust spent a lot of time writing it, again, this is not true. Proust worked very fast. This huge novel, he wrote it, I would exaggerate, in a couple of months. There's a first campaign starting in 1908. It's finished in 1912. So the first novel, the first version of the novel, it didn't take him more than 3 years to write it. And then the extension with Albertine is written between 1914 and 1916.
It's very
2 years. So Proust wrote fast. This is probably what killed him in the end. But we shouldn't have this false idea that he spent years in his room lined with cork. So of course the room exists. It existed, and he spent some time in that room. But Proust was a fast writer. You can imagine the number of pages he wrote in those years, those few years.
It's amazing to think of. Well, if I may,
that's also why so many of the sentences are not finished. What people should be aware that there are mistakes.
Yes, it's not the fault is not ours entirely of not being.
So my recommendation to readers of Proust is also that they should read Proust fast, as fast as he wrote it. They shouldn't stop and focus on on the syntax of each sentence. If they read Proust that way, they will never go beyond.
That was how I got through it in French, Antoine, as I decided, if I don't understand it, I'm going to keep going. No, seriously. And
this is how Proust should be read. I mean, you should just not rush through it, but at some point you need to
treat it as something closer to Balzac than to Finnegan's Wake.
Yes.
Although Finnegan's Wake actually benefits from being rushed through, being pulled through. But if I may speak up as an American sentimentalist, Antoine, talking of that, the thing I suppose that I love so much and that I think have made the first novels classics of English literature, of American literature as well, they're the ones that chiefly I think that Beckett responds to and that Updike and so many others, is their sanity, which is a side of Proust that isn't often underlined, that they're not the works someone whose view of the world seems entirely aberrant and remote from ours, but that his judgments of people, of little social circles, of Madame Verdurin, above all of Swann, who emerges, to my mind, as one of the most touching, heroic figures of a kind in all of modern literature, because we're acutely aware of his tragedy, of his having made a fundamentally wrong turn in life, but also of his enormous dignity, of someone who can pass from one world to another, and who ends up, not unlike Gatsby in Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby, where he finally is able to say, you know, Gatsby was all right. And Proust similarly says Swann was all right. Swann was good. It was the people around him who were corrupt, who were wrong. That there's for an American reader, there's something deeply stirring about the affirmations in Proust as much as about the losses and the stripping aways.
I mean, there is a major issue in what you are touching there. Was Proust mean, or was he good-hearted?
Was he nice, as we would say, in English?
Was Proust mean, or was he nice? Many people say that he was mean, because there are stories about the rats that he would
skewer in the
hotel,
in the bordello, right?
So there is a sort of cliché that Proust was not a nice person. I think it's completely wrong. I think that nobody can be as generous as Proust. As generous for, in the end, all of his characters in the novel are treated generously. There is not a single one that is completely evil. Even those who make Swann suffer.
The princess and the
Duchess,
the Duchess,
princess,
and
everyone has. I mean, this is where the Dostoevsky side comes up. The closeness with Dostoevsky, the idea that there is something human in each of these characters that appear in the novel, however awful their behavior can be. And I think you can say pretty much the same of Proust. Proust was a good man, and I would say that you cannot be a good writer if you're not a good man. And this sounds a bit of
old-fashioned.
To be true, but the sense that Proust loves the world.
Yes.
You cannot write a great novel if there's not this sense of sympathy with the world at large.
This
is what Proust says about Baudelaire. When his mother says in Le Contre Sainte-Beuve that Baudelaire is mean with the petite vieille, the narrator insists with his mother that even Baudelaire is not totally cruel.
I agree with. That's how I see Proust too. Nice Jewish boy in the part. Let me. I know I want to open it up to this large and patient audience and break it out of our duologue. But I do want to ask you just a couple of questions before, for my education before we do. One is about something I wrote about in the New Yorker not very long ago, and that is the Dreyfus Affair and its effect on Proust's idea of the novel and its place in the novel. Of course, you all know the Dreyfus Affair, the false accusation against the young Jewish captain, which led to his being sent to Devil's Island and then eventually brought back and vindicated, which acts as a kind of earthquake in the center of the Recherche. Is this part of the architecture of the book from the beginning, or is it a kind of earthquake that breaks up the architecture of the book?
No, it's part of the book from the beginning, because it's even more crucial in Jean Santeuil. Jean Santeuil being the failed novel that Proust wrote in the 1890s. It's failed, as I suggested, because his parents were still alive and he couldn't.
It's too polite and
couldn't go in the directions he wanted. But what is massive in Jean Santeuil is the Dreyfus Affair, and still very close to the history, the real history of the Dreyfus Affair. In fact, I have a Japanese student who is writing a dissertation in Paris with me on the Dreyfus Affair, in Proust, Chanson italienne de recherche, and I think I told you the other day, he has found, trying to explain what Proust says about the Dreyfus affair, he has found details of the Dreyfus affair that historians got wrong, which shows us which shows us the sensitivity of Proust to that affair when it was taking place in the 1890s. Even in the Recherche, you have things that are right, that all historians about the Dreyfus affair say right today in their books of the Dreyfus affair.
So Proust's chronology of the Dreyfus affair was
I mean, here's the details of the witness. He remembers who he saw on that day of Zola's trial, for instance. X was there.